Hi everyone, this is Debbie from Project 39 Mini Albums. Welcome to the tutorial of the Chaps mini album. This is part one where we make the cover, the hinge, and the base pages. Let's get started. Okay, in this segment I am going to show you how we cover the book. So I'm using the lay flat cover method designed by Tamara of Country Craft Creations. So let's get started. You'll need 3 pieces of chipboard, and they will measure 6.5 by, the spine is 2.5 by 8.5, and the covers are 6.5 by 8.5. You will also need cardstock, and you'll need 1 piece that's 5.5 by 10.5, and 2 pieces that are 8.5 by 10.5. You will also need your, I use these spacers that are available from Country Craft Creations. You get 2 that are 1 inch by 12 inch, and you get 1 that is 1.5 by 12. So we're going to use the 1 inch spacers to start. You'll put 1 at the top and 1 at the side of your scoreboard, along with the 8.5 by 10.5 inch piece of cardstock. Make sure it's pushed up against the top and the sides. Now I've already used some score tape to cover my chipboard. You can buy these score tape sheets at Country Craft Creations. They are great for getting a good cover without any bubbles. So I lay up my chipboard against the side and the top, and you can see there's a 1 inch border all around. I'm going to go ahead and cover everything while I've got the spacers out. So I'll go ahead and take the score tape backing off of the other page, the other chipboard cover. And again, I will lay it up against the side and then go up to the top and then push it down. And I'll go ahead and do the hinge piece. Now the hinge is a 1/2 inch bigger on each side, so I add 3 inches to the width of the hinge, and I use the 1.5 inch spacer on the side. So that'll give us some wings. So again, we have a 2.5 inch spine, so I have a 5.5 inch piece of cardstock. I'll peel off my backing, go up against the side of my spacer to the top, and push it down. I am going to burnish it, but we're just getting it down for now. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one cover, and then I'll do the other one in fast motion. So here I'm going to take the edge of my bone folder and burnish real well, just working the paper so it adheres to the chipboard. This is a Dress Your Craft bone folder from Country Craft Creations. It's got a nice blunt end and a bevel on one side. I like using this. It's the only bone folder I have in my stash. So I'll take that beveled end and go up against the edge of the chipboard. So you've got the indentation so you can see exactly where the chipboard is, and this helps the paper to fold real well. Now that we know exactly where it is, I'm going to use my surface and push down against the surface, and then use my bone folder to burnish that fold, especially on the ends of it. So I'll do the same for the 2 short sides that I did for the 2 long sides. Okay, now you see you've got a 1 inch box or corner all around it, and we're just going to cut off that 1 inch square from all 4 sides. So I just take my all-purpose scissors and just go around all 4 sides, cutting right on our score lines. Simple enough, but you're going to say, wait, so there's not going to be any overhang? Oh, there might be, but we're going to take care of that next. I am going to take a pair of scissors. These are long bladed scissors. These might be overkill for this, but I like using a pair of long bladed scissors. It gives me a little more flexibility. So I'm going to fold in that 1 inch piece and take my scissors and go right up against the edge of the chipboard with the top blade and just make a little cut. See, it's a tiny little piece. I'm going to put it on here so you can see how small it is. Just a tiny little sliver. And we're going to go around all four sides, and this will take care of any overhang we have. So just, whatever comes off, comes off. Sometimes it's a sliver, sometimes it's a 1/16 of an inch piece. So go ahead and turn it upside down and do the other four sides. So you've gotten all of the edges of that cardstock. Okay, and then I'm going to take my glue. So this glue is from the Art Glitter Institute. It's Designer Dries Clear Adhesive. It's called Art Glitter Glue because I just shorten it. It has nothing to do with glitter, although I think in the past it was used to adhere glitter, but crafters soon learned it was a great all-purpose glue. So I'll take it and put a bead along the edge of the chipboard. Then I'll go along the edge of the cardstock and zigzag in between. You don't need to go crazy because this is going to hold it down, and you're going to put paper on the inside to also adhere it. But I'm taking my blunt edge or my beveled edge of the bone folder and going right up against the chipboard, making sure the glue is distributed. Then I go at the very top edge of the chipboard just to help fold this paper down and burnish and make sure all the glue is distributed. Now I do have a little piece of flannel in my stash that I use to clean up any excess. So I'll go ahead against the other edge of my cardstock and zigzag glue and use my bone folder to push it up and fold it and burnish real well. So this is one of my favorite methods of covering my mini albums. I will use both, to be honest. I like this because it's got a nice crisp, clean look to it. So I'll go ahead and do the other short edge and burnish real well. So you don't have to worry about folding in any little flaps or pieces that might be in the way. And you never cut it too short because you're going against the edge of the chipboard. All right, I'll clean up any excess. Then I'll take my bone folder and go along the edges just to make sure the glue, just to get a nice crisp, clean look. I don't think anyone notices but me. All right, we're done with this. I'm going to go ahead and do this one in fast motion. So I'm just simply repeating the steps of the previous cover to cover the second cover, which probably is the back cover of the book. All right, let us cover the spine. Now we do this a little bit differently. So of course you see you've got a 1.5 inch on both sides. We're going to start the same and take the bone folder and burnish right up against the edge. This helps fold the paper, train it a little bit if you will, so it knows where it's supposed to crease when we go to fold it down. So again, I'll take it and put it up against the edge of my surface and burnish. I'm burnishing the edges, but mostly making sure there's a crease on that cardstock at the bottom. I'll do the same with the top. And we're all done with that step. So now I am going to cut out the 4 corners, which is no longer a square, but is now a rectangle. So we'll cut all of those out. But don't rush ahead here because, as I said, we're going to treat this a little bit differently. We are still going to take our long bladed scissors, fold these four corners with the cardstock showing facing up. And after I get those done, we will do it with the cardstock facing down and the chipboard now showing facing up. See, I get little slivers sometimes. Some are bigger than others. Okay, let's clean all that up. All right, now I'm not going to do anything with the sides, the wings. We're going to leave those go for now, but we are going to adhere the top and bottom, the smaller sides, to the chipboard. So again, I'll go up against the chipboard, zigzag and go around the perimeter of that piece and just burnish. Clean up any excess glue. And do the same with the other piece. Okay. Then I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to make sure I get the edges crisp. Turn it over, make sure there's no glue on my bone folder, and go up against the edge of the cardstock, the chipboard. Okay. So far, so good. Now stick with me. You'll see why I am doing this. So I put it on my scoreboard, but then I grabbed my 1.5 inch spacer. It doesn't matter which one, but I'm using this as an edge. I want to put a bead of glue, not right next to where the chipboard, the raised part is, but somewhere between a 1/16 of an inch and an 1/8 of an inch. I guess it would be 3/32 of an inch away from the edge. And since I have a hard time drawing a straight line, I use my spacer to do that. Now I also am going to put a piece of score tape. I have some 1/4 inch score tape, and I'll just put it in about the center. It doesn't have to be exact, and I don't go all the way to the top and the bottom because I will supplement this with glue. My theory here is I want to make sure it sticks and dries so the score tape will help adhere it while the glue is drying. So I've got that bead of glue. Now I'll go along the outside of my cardstock, in between the bead of glue and the score tape, and on the outside of the bead and glue and the score tape. Again, I'm using a good amount of glue, but it's not going to be sopping wet. You don't need that much for it to adhere. So I've got the chipboard exposed side facing down, and I'm going to put it up against the top edge and side and just pull this until it sort of falls down in that gap, and then push it down. So you're real close to the edge of the chipboard. Of course you can't see it because it's covered in cardstock. And then I burnish real well. So what you want is the two pieces of chipboard to be even with each other. Now I'll do the same with the other side. I'll go ahead and grab my glue and my little spacer and run my little bead of glue. Now if you've got a steady hand, you don't need the spacer. You can just do it. You just don't want the glue to be too close to the edge of the chipboard, or else it's going to glue itself to that very edge, and it'll pull when the book opens. So anyhow, add some glue. Push towards the top. Make sure it's even. Now, since there's not much room on my scoreboard, I move it over, but I'm still making sure it's even with the top. And then I'll go ahead and pull my other cover until it lays flat. I'll burnish on the bottom. And just work the glue, again, so it's distributed evenly and the score tape is going to help adhere it. So it looks great. It's a nice looking cover, but it is a little flimsy. So we're going to take care of that with an extra piece of cardstock. So we've got a piece that's 5 inches by 8.5. And it's a little bit too big because I don't want it to show, but we're going to cover the spine with it. That'll help keep it less flimsy, but it still was going to move. It'll be perfect. So what I want to do is cut this down just by maybe 1/16 of an inch, just so there won't be any overhang. So I use my little paper trimmer and cut down a little piece. See, it's not very big. And then I'm going to use my glue to adhere this. You could use a little bit of score tape if you want to, so you're not using so much glue, but 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And something else I realized after I did this is I could have taken off that fine point tip to my glue, because it's really important that you get the glue down quickly. You don't want any of it to dry. I happen to be in a climate right now where it's humid and it's cool, so I am okay. If I was in an arid climate, hot day, fans going, I would probably take off that tip and get more glue down, because you want to make sure this paper does adhere real well. You don't want it sopping wet, but you want to give the glue a chance to stick. So you can see how much I'm using. All right, and then I'll go ahead and put this down. I just try to make sure it's right up against the bottom and it's parallel with the bottom, and then I'll just burnish it with my arm, my hand, and then use my bone folder and do a really good job of burnishing this so it is stuck down good. Now I'm just going to take that blunt edge of my bone folder and go in that crevice between the spine and the cover. I'm not going to fold it up right now because I want the glue on the edge to dry. So I will probably work it again a little bit once I put the hinge on. But I'm going to put this aside and let this dry before I fold it up anymore. So there is the cover of our book. All right, we're going to make the hinge. And the hinge, the paper for the hinge is going to be 7 15/16 by 11. The reason it's an odd number is because my pages are going to be 8 inches tall, and I wanted to have a little give, so I added 1/16 of an inch less than 8 inches. We're going to score every half an inch from 2.5 to 8. Okay, and the reason we're scoring every half an inch from 2.5 to 8 is because my hinges are going to be half an inch, and there's going to be a half an inch gusset. I usually do 3/16, but I wanted a little bit extra room. So we start at 2.5, go to 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, and 8. So just so you know, we have a set of hinges: hinge, hinge, gusset, hinge, hinge, gusset, hinge, hinge, gusset, hinge, hinge. Easy enough. So we have a set of hinges and then the gusset, set of hinges and then the gusset. So what I want to do is burnish, fold and burnish between each set of hinges. It's a little more difficult because this is not, because the gusset is not 3/16. But I'm going to take my little chalk pen and tell you there's a hinge, there's a set of hinges, that and that. All right, so that's the gusset. That's the part that's going to go flat down on our book. So if you have to mark it on the underside. And you may notice that I turned it so now the bumpy side is facing up. So now I'm going to fold and burnish in between each set of hinges. So there's one set of hinges, and you can see that's the one set of hinges I folded in the center of that. Here's another set. I'm going to turn this. And when I fold it, I'm making sure my sides are lined up, and then I take my bone folder and burnish right on that hinge. I'll do that for number 3. And I'll do that for number 4. So now I'm going to turn it so that bumpy side is facing down. And you can see there's a slight bevel. You can see where the sets of hinges are. Now, this is what I'm going to do. Take my thumbs, they're down at the bottom, and the rest of my fingers are at the top. I pull this towards me so that first hinge, the mountain part of it, becomes a taller mountain. And we go up until I have enough room. I can grab that 1/2 inch hinge and I fold it and bend it at the score lines. We can do the next one too. Now I have something to hold on to. So I pull it up so this next set of hinges is a mountain, and that the part that's coming up is the part that we scored and burnished, so it really wants to do what we want it to. And then I just pull it together and go back and forth just a couple times. Pull it together, burnish it just with my fingers, and burnish it the other way. And now here's the last one. All right, so now we've got the 4 hinges, but they're not glued down. They're still, just so you can see them, they're still just sticking together because that's what they want to do. You see the gussets are all facing up. So now what we're going to do is glue this together. I'm going to do this slowly. So again, I'll use my Designer Dries Clear Glue from the Art Glitter Company, my Art Glitter Glue. I'm going to open this and pull it open a little bit. I'm going to just zigzag, and then I'm going to run a bead of glue, trying to put this close to the top, but not at the very top, because I don't want it to seep out. I'm going to turn it upside down, and if you need to, you can put wax paper or something else on your surface so it doesn't get glue on your surface. And then I'm going to pinch this together, move my fingers to let the glue distribute. If any comes out, clean it up, but you may have noticed I didn't put glue right at the very edge. So when I move it, it goes to the edge, but it doesn't seep out because I didn't have too much. So now that is sticking together pretty well. We'll have it together even more in just a second. All right, I'll do the same with the next one. Zigzag, and then run a bead along the top. Turn it upside down, pinch this together, and distribute it. Number 3. Pinch it together. And we're good. And now the last one. Pinch it together and distribute that glue. All right, now I'm going to pull this all towards me, all 4 hinges, and I'm going to burnish. Then I'll push it away from me. All 4 of these I'll push away from me, and I'll burnish. So now you see we've trained the paper pretty well. It'll go either way. But I'm going to put them all facing up, and so there is our set of hinges. Now we're going to put them in the book, but let me grab the book real quick. And remember, we haven't really worked this yet because we were letting everything dry. So again, I'm taking that blunt point and I'm going just across the between the hinge and the page several times, and now move the book. Now, again, this is a very blunt bone folder. If you have one with a point, you have to be really careful. You don't want this to tear into your page. But now that page will open real well. So what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to erase this because the lettering's driving me crazy. I write it on there so I remember what I want to tell you, because I cut everything all at once and then I go through it. But by this point, I'm tired of reading it. All right, so now we're going to sort of dry fit this. So these 3 hinges take up about 1.5 inches worth of space, and you've got lots of room on the side, and you'll be able to put just about 1/2 inch between where this gusset is and where we're going to have our first hinge. I don't have any features in this book that will come off of the pages, so you can center it top to bottom. If I had like a top loading pocket and I wanted to have tags sticking up at the top, I would justify it down towards the bottom, have it about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom and almost 1/2 inch at the top, just to give a little room for those tags. But I'm going to center it as best I can on here. Again, I'm just going to eyeball it at first, know where I want it to end up. It's important that this is as straight as possible, but don't freak out about it. You know, just do your best. Do your best. Okay, I'm not going to erase that because we're going to cover it in just a second. So I take my glue and I'm going to go in that channel between the hinges. If I go off course, it's no big deal. But I want to make sure I get some glue there. And now I'll zigzag. Again, I don't start right at the edge, but I'll zigzag all my way, leave about 1/4 inch on each side. Again, I want to have enough glue to have it stick, but not so much it's going to be crazy. All right, that's all I'm going to do for right now. Now I'll take it, and I sort of know where I want it to go because I've already dry fit it, and I just place it down. Now, there's an even number of pages, so there's an odd number of gussets. It works perfectly for me to show you. I'm taking my finger. If you don't like to touch the paper, you know, if you don't have that sensory issue, you can use your bone folder, but my finger fits in perfectly in this 1/2 inch gusset. I'm going to start at the top and go down, and I'm making sure it's staying in place. And then I'm going to start at the bottom and go up. Don't go all the way down because I don't want the glue to seep out that first time. So now I've got that center gusset down. Now I'm going to take the hinge to the left of that center gusset and pull it over the gusset. And you'll see this paper moves. So I'm going to move that, and then I'm going to do the same here. Start from the top, go down to the bottom. Start from the bottom, go up to the top. And I'm trying to make sure that this area right where the gusset ends and the hinge begins is adhered. Then I'm going to go to the hinge that's to the right of that center gusset, move that over towards the left, and do the same thing. Distributing that glue. All right, then I'm going to do the one to the far left, move it over, and burnish. Now we don't have any glue here yet, so the only glue is from the edge of the hinge to the edge of the other hinge. But I want to make sure we get it right. So now I'm going to take this one and do the same thing. And I'm pretty happy with the placement. I'm pretty happy with how everything's looking. I'm going to take my blunt end of my bone folder and go right along where the gusset edge and the hinge begins. I'm going to do it on both sides of all 4 of those hinges, and that's going to make sure that it adheres real well. Then I'll pull all the hinges to one side and burnish, pull them all to the other side and burnish. And I'm pretty happy with how that is adhered. All right, now I need to do this flap. So I'm going to take my glue and go along the edge there, go up on my little wing, I call it the wing of my hinge paper, zigzag, and go down. Now, you want to make sure you do this fairly quickly, and then you burnish real well right in that. First we'll burnish it down. I don't want to take my time because I want to work while this glue is wet. And I'll take my bone folder and again go where this indentation is from where the cover and the hinge connect. I don't know, how many times am I going back and forth? 10 times, 15? Until you feel like every time I'm pushing down a little bit more. And I'm not using the very tip, I'm using the side. Use the tip, you're surely going to get a hole. If you get a hole, it's not the worst thing in the world. Take one of your scraps of paper and cut it down the same size and glue it on. No big deal. But hopefully you won't get a hole. All right, so that side is done. And then I'll do this side. I'm going to turn this around. And same thing. I'll add glue here. Whoops. No big deal. Then go all the way up here. Zigzag. Really do want to make sure I get it good here in this area, so I added a little extra glue just because this was a much bigger, bigger piece. Take my bone folder. Some glue is seeping out, which I don't want. And burnish. And then once I've gotten that down, I'm gonna go in this indentation, rock back and forth. I'll go ahead and burnish this way, move this over, burnish this way. And there we go. Okay, again, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna let it dry flat. When I come back again, I will once again work this. But if I let it dry flat, it won't bubble up right here. If we move it now, this paper may have been glued here and here, and it may bubble up right there. Let's just let it dry. So that is it to making and putting the hinge in the page. After this, we can make our base pages. Okay, from 8 pieces of our 8.5 by 11 paper, I am cutting 8 pieces, 6 by 8.5. So you're just going to cut, and you'll have pieces left over, which we will use. We're not going to use them. We will use them. I am going to take one and show you what we're going to do. So I am just going to, actually I'm going to turn it this way, take my bone folder and score at 8. It's easier for me to score at 8 because I can really hold it down and make sure it's up at the side and the top, as opposed to going here at 1/2 an inch, just because I'm right-handed. It just makes sense for me to do that. Then I'm going to take each piece and just miter slightly from the score line up to off the paper. So like I say, just a little bit. So I've already done that with the other 7 pieces. And then I will fold and burnish each of those. Oh, I did not miter these, and I really meant to, so I'm going to do these real quick. All right, I'm going to miter these other ones real quick. It's obviously easier to miter if you have not burnished them, but no big deal. And why do I have my scoreboard? Because I'm going to use that to put everything together. If you don't have a scoreboard that's 12 inches, I mean, it's okay. You still can use what you have, but you may not be able to use it for all of the things that I use mine for. All right, so I have one of my 8 pieces of paper, and I've got this 1/2 inch piece facing up. I'll take another one, and here's my 1/2 inch flap. I'm going to turn it over and face that down. I'm going to take my glue. Well, first I'm going to make sure that this is up against the top and to the side, and this piece is right butted up at that flap. I'm going to zigzag some glue, and then I'm going to the very top of that other piece. See? And then this is going to come down. I'm going to take my bone folder and burnish it. I'll turn this over and flip it. And now this piece that's on the top is going to go against the side. And I'm going to zigzag some glue. Go up at the very top of that one piece. Fold this down and burnish. So why am I using the scoreboard? Because it holds everything straight and my page is nice and straight. I'll do it one more time and then I'll do the other ones off camera. So here I've got it facing up. This flap is going to be facing down. I'm right up against the top with both of these pieces. I'll zigzag and then go to the top. I go to the top because when I zigzag, I don't go all the way the 1/2 inch, and that's why I do it at the top. I mean, it doesn't matter because, again, you're going to cover this with paper, and that's going to hold it down. And then I'll flip this over, pull this little piece up to the top. Now, if for some reason you're finding it hard to get this piece down, you can just take it and put it in the paper trimmer and cut off a little bit of it, just a sliver. I think my channel should have been called Just a Sliver because it seems like I'm always cutting just a sliver off. All right, and I'll fold that down and burnish. So we'll do that to the other 2 pieces and meet you back. Okay, now we're going to attach our base pages onto our hinge. So our base pages are basically a tube. We will put that tube onto the hinge. Now don't forget this, the hinges were cut just a smidgen smaller, so you shouldn't have any problem putting it on. If for some reason you do, you can just clip a little bit, and I go just to about a halfway mark here on the hinge itself and just do a little miter. Now I don't need it because, as you could see, it fit in pretty easily, but if it's easier for you to do, then do it. Now the other thing is I haven't put glue in here, and I want to show you its placement. So the hinge is 1/2 inch long. This page is going to go down till there's just about 1/8 of an inch between the gusset and 1/8 of an inch up the hinge. So we'll have most of the hinge will be encapsulated by our tube, but some of it will still show. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you go right down to the bottom, it's hard not to make it, the paper will, you'll hear it. It won't bend smoothly. So you want it just, again, a smidgen of a bit up the hinge. So now that I know exactly where I want it to go, I'm going to start with all of the hinges facing to the left. I'm going to take my glue and zigzag. I've gotten good at this zigzagging. It's not perfect, but it's good. I'll go on the part facing the back, and I do start at the back page. I figure by the time I get to the front, I'll know exactly what I'm doing. And then I'll do the front, zigging and zagging along. Then I'll take my little tubey, open it up, start at the top, then go to the bottom, fit it down, and then come up a little bit so it's not touching the bottom. I also want it to sit on the hinge very evenly so it's parallel to the gusset, and I want this part parallel to the bottom, this part parallel to the edge. Now, if your hinge was not made perfectly, one of those might be out of an adjustment. Just do the best you can. If you're off by a little bit, you won't notice. If you're off by more than ½ an inch, you will notice. But I can't imagine you'd be off by more than ½ an inch. There's not that much room. So we'll just put that on and burnish. I actually see this is on a little, I have to pull it up a little bit from here. There we go. It wasn't perfect, but since it's wet glue, you've got a little give to it. I used to do it with just score tape, and there was no give. Once it was down, it was down. I mean, you would have to use some undo or later fluid or something to take it up. So it's much easier to use the liquid adhesive. We'll do it again. So again, I'm staying towards the top half of the hinge. As far as if it were to face up, it's the top half. Make sure when you fold it down, you don't go all the way down. It's still sitting up so it's not getting glue on the part of the gusset that's showing. Then I'll take my little tube, put it at the top. Oops. You have to sort of close it. It can't be very wide open, or else it won't fit. I'm making sure it's lined up with the bottom. It's lined up here. It's lined up on my hinge. I'm cleaning up some of the glue that came out there. It's still good there. So I'll take my bone folder and burnish on this side and then on this side. And then burnish it real good. I think you should have the hang of it by now, but I'll talk to you as I put these in. So the method that I used is, how long have I been making mini albums? I can't tell you. Many years. Somewhere between maybe 7 years, 8 years. I mean, not forever, but judging by my Etsy site and my sales, I have over 500 sales. I've probably made over 500 mini albums. Sometimes the sales are not mini albums, but still. I probably have made over 500. And I've watched different people in the beginning, how they make their mini albums, and I've taken the parts that made sense to me from one maker and then watched another maker and took those parts of how she made hers or he, and just came up with my own method. If I liked it, I would use it. If I didn't like it, I would find a substitute or do something a little different. And I invite you to do that. You know, watch how I do it, make a couple that way, and take my method and use the parts that you like until you come up with your own method. And it's not to say I won't change. I might see something else in my next tutorial. I might try something different because I saw somebody do something and it made sense, so I tried it. Okay, so here we are good. We're even there. I'm 1/8 of an inch away from my gusset. I'm parallel to the other pages in the side. I like it. And don't forget, by the time you've added all of your other pages, your decorations, your photos, if you were off by a little bit, nobody's going to notice. All right, now that I've got the pages in, I'm going to take my bone folder one more time and burnish. Whoops. Okay. And before I go any further, I'm going to label so you know when I call a page, you'll know why. This is my inside front cover. IFC, inside front cover. This is 1F, the front of page 1. 1B, the back of page 1. 2F, 2B, 3F, 3B, 4F, 4B, and inside back cover. And of course, I'll just call that the back cover, that the front cover, and that is our spine. That's the end of part 1. Look for part 2 where we do the features for the pages.